Yep, I'm ready to hang my head in shame. I'm sorry. I owe you an apology. If you tuned in last week on Tuesday for the live to learn about the top 4 mistakes most people make when trying to get out of burnout and what to avoid if you are in burnout, I am so sorry. The sound quality and the video quality was horrible. I was recording, or I had gone live from the hotel we were staying in last week, and I had no idea until it had uploaded, and I checked it the next day when I had internet connection to look at it, and I went, "Oh, no. Oh my gosh, this is awful." So to all of my auditory sensitive friends, I'm one of that in that group. Holy cow, it was horrible. I'm so sorry. I'm taking that down every place, and this is replacing it so that we will have a good clean episode because this topic is really important. The top 4 mistakes to avoid if you're in burnout, because these were the things that I didn't know were getting in my way. They were actually creating that chronic cycle burnout loop and making it harder for me to get into restoration. And the whole point of having this episode was to share that with you, and you couldn't get it because it was horrible, and I'm so sorry. Update on Easter Lily I shared last week. She is doing so much better. She got her stitches out this morning. Josh and I got up extra early to be at the vet, the crack of dawn this morning for them to take the stitches out. She did indeed have a mast cell carcinoma, so it was a cancerous tumor. The surgeon is pretty sure that he got everything out. There was no way to tell because they had to dissect it to get it out. It was so big. It was so rapid in its growth. So she's doing much better. They think that they've got everything. We just kind of have to monitor it to make sure that everything's okay for her going forward. Her lymph nodes look clear, which is so fantastic. And she was just bouncy and back to her happy little self now that her mommy is home because I was gone for almost 2 weeks. Um, I am so tired of being in a car. I cannot tell you how happy I am to be home, be back at my own little space, my own food and all my own stuff. Because man, eating out is awful. I ooh, geez, man, I don't know how people do it consistently. Like every now and then it's fun. I like to go out, but with my food allergies and sensitivities, it's always kind of a gamble to eat out away from home anyway, because it's like, is this going to make me sick or not? And I consistently get the same thing because I know it won't make me sick, but I want to try other things because, my ADHD dopamine hit wants the adventure and novelty. So being out of town that long was a bit of a challenge. Just some stuff that's been going on. But hey, guys, we're going to get into this episode, dive into the 4 top mistakes to avoid if you're in burnout. And we're going to get going and dive into all of those really important places and how you can get some help getting started. Let's go. Hi, I'm Carole Jean, late identified autistic ADHD human, and your host of the Mind Your Autistic Brain talk show and Burnout Restoration Unveilers community. You're about to experience the new way to thrive as a neurodistinct brain and body by getting off the chronic cycle burnout loop for good. By unveiling your authentic self, defining what thriving feels like for you, knowing your burnout signpost, so those top 20 burnout warning signs are a thing of the past, and stepping into your best life as the creator and leader you are meant to be. Get ready, because this is where we go against the mainstream, say no to outdated self-care tips, and we say yes to who we are in order to create an energized, authentic, peaceful, and harmonized world. Welcome to Mind Your Autistic Brain. Well, we are live every Tuesday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time in the month of May. And I am really excited to be able to go live. And we're streaming to LinkedIn, Facebook and YouTube. And then the replay is going on to the podcast. And we are I think we're on 10 different platforms over there. So you can get us on Spotify, which I always have polls and questions. So make sure you join in and engage in the conversation there on Spotify. On Spotify, you can also get the video version as well, which I really like because there's days that I need to lip read versus just listen. And the live closed captions that you get on YouTube are really helpful, especially if you're in burnout and you're experiencing having a hard time processing auditory information. And a lot of times also it impacts our ability to read information and take it in. Eye teaming and tracking can get thrown off in burnout and certain degrees of burnout. So just some little tips there. I try and provide things in as many different formats as I possibly can, so that everybody has a way to access the information. Because when you're in burnout, day to day, how you take in and process information can be different than it was maybe the day before or the hour before. So, just a little heads up there. I try and do that as often as I can. And for my book, How Spicy Is Your Burnout, that will be coming out in conjunction with the third annual Self Care September series this year, you're going to get early access to the book and so many other things. Um, I decided to do my own publishing and self publish the book because I wanted to make sure all of the accessibility factors were there. So it's in open dyslexic font. It's going to be in bionic font. It's going to be in a font that's also just easy to read in like a sans serif. It's going to be in audiobook form as well as video with live closed captions, because so often many of us in our community have auditory processing disorder and delays, and sometimes you need to be able to lip read. I can't even watch TV without live closed captions. So having different varieties and ways to access this very important information when it comes to burnout was exceptionally important to me, because I know that I wasn't able to take in the information that might have helped me because it wasn't in a format that was accessible. And our theme for the Shine a Light campaign was all around accessibility, because I'm very passionate about trying to make sure people can access information for minds of all kinds, right? So let's get into these top 4 mistakes to avoid if you're in burnout and you're seeking to move into burnout restoration. That's what we're talking about here today. And thank you so much to the very kind people who sent me messages on YouTube and also directly to email, because you said, "Hey, I tried to listen to the episode. I just couldn't do it." So again, apologies for that. Hey, crummy internet in a hotel. So hopefully this will get it, and we can really dive into what it is to be able to navigate burnout and how and the things that you're going to want to avoid. So the first mistake that I made, everything that I'm sharing with you is stuff that I have also done. So no shame in the game here, folks. We're all playing in the same sandbox, trying to get out of burnout, stay out of burnout, right? That's what we're looking for. We're looking for that restoration. So you're not alone. I can talk about it because I've had it happen. I've done it. I have lived it. I have painfully figured it out, white knuckling through with no help. But I want to be able to give you that help. So the number one mistake when people are in burnout and they're trying to get out of burnout is that you don't have what I call the TDS, the Thrive Destination Statement. This is essentially like your GPS coordinates for what thriving and restoration is for you. Now, I'm going to give you a little caveat here in the sense that I had been on the chronic cycle burnout loop for 40 years. My first burnout began at the age of 6. So, as an adult, I had no concept, no idea of what thriving could even look like for me, what that would feel like. That was a foreign concept. I just knew I was miserable and suffering, and I just wanted to feel better. That was all that was like my GPS was, I want to feel better. Like, I just want all of this to stop, the overwhelm, the exhaustion, the body aches, all the stuff that like disruptive sleep cycle and all of those things that are part of burnout. I just wanted it to stop. I just wanted to feel better. I wanted everything to not be so hard. And if that's where you've been and that's where you are, hey, that's totally okay. But I want you to know that through this process and through the unveiling method and the research and the development of this program over the last decade now, almost, is creating a Thrive destination statement. So this really helps take you deeper into where you want to go. You know, we've got that Google Maps and map programs on our phone, and you got a little app and you put the address in and then it takes you where you want to go. You can avoid, you know, road construction, you know, it lets you know, hey, there's a speed trap up ahead. All of those things are possible because you've got a destination and it can navigate around the barriers and it can take you in the shortest, most direct route to get there. Hey, it even tells you where the cheapest gas along the way is to stop and get the most affordable gas. So think about your burnout restoration journey in that way. The Thrive Destination Statement is going to help you put in a destination so that you can get there faster, for starters, because that's kind of the whole point is we want to get out of burnout and get to thrive as fast as we possibly can, right? Like that's usually the goal is like, this sucks. I want out right now. Like I want out yesterday. I want out last week. So the Thrive Destination Statement is yours. It's going to be unique to you. And I'm really excited because this Sunday, coming up in our Unveilers support community, this is one of the things that we're working on, and everybody's kind of coming back and revisiting. Because here's the thing about your TDS, your Thrive Destination Statement, it is always evolving. As you're evolving and growing, so is the vision and the dream and the destination of what thriving is for you. Like where I am today in restoration, I'm entering year 4 this fall. I could not have envisioned this for myself. Number one, I had no framework. No one was having a conversation with me about what thriving could look like for me based on my sensory profile, based on my needs, based on my experiences, my dreams, my desires, what I wanted my life to look like. Like I never thought about that. No one talked to me about that. I'd never thought about it in this specific of a way. So your Thrive destination statement, not having one, not having a place that you're headed other than I just want it to stop, can really keep you on that chronic burnout cycle loop because you don't have a place to go. And without having a place to go, you can't take the most direct route. You can't avoid the barriers. And you don't have any way to know, hey, where do I go in and refuel along the way in this? And that Thrive Destination Statement helps you put all of that together. And in the Unveiling method, we craft the Thrive Destination Statement and we revisit it, kind of like what we're doing in our Unveilers support community this weekend. We're revisiting this. And a lot of people, this, you know, if they're part of the self-care and part of the toolkit, First Steps to Burnout Restoration Toolkit, and they're not in the full Unveiling program yet, they're doing this for the first time, a lot of them. So, you know, this is something that is accessible to do. It takes some framework. It takes, you know, hey, taking what my values are, putting some components together and creating that Thrive destination statement. All right, so let's talk about mistake number 2, the restoration illusion trap. This is one of those barriers, one of the traps that you can get caught in if you're not aware that it can happen. Now, I didn't know that this was happening, not till after the fact. And that's why I identify this, and that's why I talk about it as one of the mistakes when you're trying to get out of burnout, is the restoration illusion trap is, let's say, you know, on how spicy is your burnout, there's the 5 levels of spicy. Spicy. I've got the poblano peppers, level 1. That's when you just, you know, you're just a little bit spicy in your burnout. Level 2 is the jalapeno pepper, getting a little warmer. Number 3, level 3 is the cayenne pepper. You got some spice going on. You got a little heat happening there, friend. Level 4 is the habanero pepper. Baby, you're hot. And I don't mean in the best way. I mean in like, I'm on fire. Somebody put me out. And then level 5 is the ghost pepper. This is where a lot of times everything's just kind of shutting down. It's you're not on fire flaming. You're just like totally burnt out. Like there's no fire. there's no heat. You're burnt out. And most people come to me and they have been circling. So the chronic cycle burnout loop usually circles 3 levels in the spicy chart. So most people come to me in late identified life circling levels 3, 4, and 5. So you may hit a 5 every now and then, but then you kind of hang out and move between a 3 and a 4, move to a 5, and you're never really fully restored, and you just kind of keep moving around those areas. Occasionally, I'll see somebody that's a 2, 3, 4. That's kind of that's less common, to be honest. Um, if I say, once I describe and when I do the workshops and talk about what a level 1, poblano pepper burnout is, people are like, "Whoa, I would love to get to that. Like that to me would be thriving, right? Or level 2. Wow, holy cow, that would be thriving to me, especially if you've been hanging out like 3, 4, 5 for years or even decades. So the burnout restoration illusion trap is, let's say you've been circling that 3, 4, and 5 spicy burnout level. And let's say you've been in a 4 for months or even years. Hey, let's be real, sometimes it's a decade. And things change in your life, so the demands shift. The needs that you have that have maybe been unmet, maybe more of those needs or a critical linchpin need is getting met for you all of a sudden more consistently. So you start to feel better. You start to feel more energized. You start to feel more like yourself. And this is where the trap is. You might have been at a 4 for so long and you've only moved down to maybe a 3, a level 3 burnout or a level 2 burnout. Let's just say there's been a lot of changes in your life. So maybe you're getting more support than maybe you've had in the past. Maybe things changed at work. Maybe you got a new boss that communicates better. But things have changed. So you've gone from a level 4 and you've moved down the spicy level to maybe a level 2 or a level 3. And the experience of that, the way it feels is, holy cow, I feel better. Right. And we talked about that in mistake number 1 is like, sometimes if we don't have that thrive destination statement and the only thing that we know is we want to feel better, this is kind of where you fall into that trap because you didn't have the thrive statement to kind of envision what that really is going to be for you and to know what the levels of spicy are so you know when you're out of it. So you think, oh, I feel better, so I'm out of burnout. But in reality, you've only moved down the spicy level scale and you're only, instead of being a habanero, you might be a jalapeno pepper. So that's mistake number 2. All right, mistake number 3. Now, when I say this word, some of you are going to be like, "Oh, what you mean?" or get all upset. And, I don't know. Everybody has a different reaction to this one. But expectations. Now, I'm not telling you to lower your expectations by any means. But I think one of the things that really makes burnout restoration challenging, and especially as it relates to the restoration illusion trap, because, hey, if we've been at a 4 for a really long time and some things change and we move down the scale and we're feeling better, the expectation was that I'm going to feel better, therefore I'm out of burnout. Like that's how we're defining it, right? Because we didn't have that destination statement. But let me dive into what I mean by expectations, right? So, expectations that aren't in alignment with restoration timelines for your needs and your burnout spicy level and what thriving is for you. Because That's what I love about the Unveiling method is I didn't just create this for me. I created it for anyone that needs to use it. For minds of all kinds with a variety of sensory profiles, looking at your unique needs in your life. And when I say expectations, what I mean is what do we anticipate as the outcome? And when we look at timelines, I always, like I said when we started, when you're in burnout, you want it out of it like last week. So we tend to get in this hurry up and let's just get there mentality. And the expectation and the goal is like just to stop suffering. We're just sick of suffering. We just want to stop the suffering. But this also kind of goes back to let's look at where you are on the spicy scale. Let's look and see, what level of spicy burnout are you in right now? Because we don't recognize that we're in burnout until those warning signs, that internal component shows up in our life and we feel burnout. We experience burnout internally. But the thing is, burnout was already showing up before you felt it in your external world in a lot of ways, in the places I call burnout signposts. And everybody has different signposts. And part of the Unveiling method is that we put together a whole list of things that are signposts for you so that you can start to recognize those burnout signposts in your external world so you can catch that. You can make the adjustments necessary before it shows up internally as that warning sign. Because by the time you feel it, it's too late. You're already in it, right? So if we're looking at and identifying what burnout spicy level I'm in, and I can then look at the Unveiling method and say, okay, based on this degree of burnout, this is what it's going to take, essentially. This is what it's going to look like with that Thrive destination statement, what my restoration and thrive is going to look like. And you can look and see where you are, where you want to go, and what the gap is between that. And then we start breaking that down into things that are going to allow you to recognize when you're moving forward, because this is not a linear journey. This is not like a straight linear timeline. This isn't like, okay, in 30 days I'm here and in 30 days I'm going to be here. It's very up and down. It's very ebb and flow. It is a process and a journey. And when you have the framework, though, and you have the internal transformation where those linear expectations are changed and reformatted essentially into what does that feel like? What is it that I'm experiencing? What am I getting? What am I gaining energy from? Where am I aligning my values with what I'm doing with my calendar every day? That's a big one. We dive into that in the self-care phase 2 part. But it's a really big part of it because think about when you set this expectation of what something's supposed to be, and then it's not what you thought it was when you get there. Then you get really dejected. You feel like, well, I failed. And in burnout restoration, that is something I experienced. I thought so much in the early journey of this, I was failing. I wasn't doing it right. And as a late identified autistic ADHDer, I already felt like I was failing and doing it wrong most of my life. So in the Unveiling method, we really reframe this. We look at this in a totally different way because I know that that's the mistake that happens. And I know that that's the mistake that makes restoration even harder is when we start shaming and blaming and feeling really crappy, like we're not doing it right. Well, first of all, none of us were ever taught from our neurotype perspective what thriving is, how to manage our energy, how to understand and gain energy. Because everybody's talking about spoon theory and where our energy is going out. But for me, it's equally, if not more important, to talk about where energy's coming in and the things that set us up for being energized times 10 versus just a one-to-one exchange. So let's talk about mistake number 4. Mistake number 4 is we can get caught in one of the 12 thinking traps. Now, there are 12 thinking traps that we can fall into, and typically, most often, most humans, all humans, no matter your neurotype, fall into 2 to 3 predominant thinking traps. Now, here's an example of a thinking trap. One of those can be all or nothing thinking. Like either I'm doing it right or I'm doing it wrong. There's no in between. And hello for us black and white thinkers. I've really learned how to think in the gray. I'm proud of myself because that was a journey in and of itself. But that's a thinking trap that can be a barrier to burnout restoration. When we have, we get caught in those thought loops, we're ruminating about what has happened or what somebody said, or have that predictive thinking where we're trying to, worst case scenario, all the potential pitfalls, it's called catastrophizing, going forward. That can also keep us stuck. Those thinking traps can keep us stuck and not moving forward. So then we're not doing the things that we need to do to get out of burnout because we're busy thinking about all the potential things that could go wrong. Now, Dr. Katie Milkman, who I love her work and her research, looks at, we're just going to talk about it like this because this is how it's termed in the research, negative thinking. So catastrophizing can also be classified as like negative thinking, right? But negative thinking has a positive. I love this. Has a positive. We actually need to be able to have predictive, catastrophizing, negative type thinking, because if we've thought through what could potentially go wrong, then we've already put a plan in place so that if that happens, this is what I do or how I respond, right? That's going to help us. But here's where it is harmful and can really be a barrier to your restoration. And that is when you hit a point of what I call diminishing return in your thought loop. So, yes, looking at what could potentially go wrong, make a list. But here's the thing, this is where healthy boundaries start to come in. And healthy boundaries are things that most of us didn't learn growing up. I'm 49. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. This was not part of dinner time conversation. For most people that I talk to, this was not their dinner time conversation either. So when we do that, we have boundaries that we set with other people. And people are usually, when we talk about boundaries, we usually default to, oh, my boundary with other people. But what I'm talking about is an internal boundary, the boundaries that we set with ourselves and how we honor those. So if you find that you're falling into that catastrophizing negative thinking, then you reach a place where you go, okay, I'm going to think of the top 3, maybe 5. You set a number limit. I'm going to think of the top 3 to top 5 potential pitfalls of whatever the thing is that you want to do. And I'm going to come up with one solution for each one, as if it happens, this would be sort of the recourse or the next step. And then I'm going to stop. That's it. Because you reach a point of diminishing return. Number one, the possibilities now statistically of any of those things happening is pretty low, but it's still possible. And sometimes our brains simply need to know that we've thought through everything, because that kind of comes back to that safety part. Like, we can't feel safe in the world until we've thought things through that could potentially be a problem. Sorry about that. So that is mistake number 4. Now, you can get all 12 of these thinking traps to identify what they are for you And hey, you can use that to help identify what the thinking traps are, the people in your life and relationships, because they can be falling into them too. And that can be a barrier to your communication and connection. And that is one of the bonuses in the First Steps to Burnout Restoration Toolkit. So if you would like to dive in and get started on your burnout restoration journey today and do it in this self-paced toolkit, you get two of the most powerful burnout restoration tools that I have in the Unveiling method, which is your needs reflection form, which includes 30 of the top human needs, and identifying which is met for you and which is unmet, because burnout is a result of consistent unmet needs. And for most of us, we're not even sure what that is. So you can hop on over to resources.mindyourautisticbrain.com and get the First Steps to Burnout Restoration Toolkit and get started on that. It also includes your sensory profile reflection, because your sensory profile in burnout is different than when in Thrive. So you hear me talk about this a lot in our sensory profile. So the sensory profile assessment is there, and it is a neuroaffirming sensory profile reflection form. It is not going to make you feel bad about how your sensory system experiences the world, my friend, because I didn't like what I kept seeing out there. And I'm like, hey, this is just part of who I am. It is not a bad thing. It's just what it is. And you get that 12 thinking traps as the bonus, along with the 4 steps to empowered thinking, because that's where we start to take the creatorship, the leadership, and the authorship in our own life and where we're going in our TDS. You also get restoration self-care tips from the neurodistinct brain and body perspective. These things aren't your usual self-care. These are self-care perspectives and actions that are totally geared towards a much larger restoration step than slapping some cucumbers on your eyeballs. So check out your First Steps to Burnout Restoration Toolkit. It's self-paced, and that also gives you the free 30-day access pass to our Unveilers Restoration Support Community. And we're meeting this Sunday. I would love to have you join us. Check that link out in the show notes below. I hope that this has helped you dive in and maybe identifying some places in your own burnout restoration journey that may have been creating barriers or blocks for you that you weren't aware of. Because you know what? I didn't know that these were happening either until I got to the other side. And I hope this has helped you today. Take care and join me tomorrow with Christine Jenkins live at 3 o'clock Eastern Time to talk all about autistic women's health, aging as an autistic, perimenopause, menopause, and this incredible research study that Christine is part of. And we would love for you to take part in the study. So I'll see you tomorrow.